Shadiversity.
Greetings, I'm Shad, and I have to tell you guys a bit about my new drug, okay, my new addiction, as it were. But not only that, not just to inform you, about this game if you haven't heard about it. No, I want to talk about why this game is so brilliant and what it is doing better than so many other attempts that have gone before it. The video game I am talking about is Divinity Original Sin number 2. And this is interesting because, in contrast, this is a sequel, right? And in contrast to Divinity Sin number 1, Original Sin number 1, I couldn't get into number 1. But boy, number 2 has me by the balls, I tell you guys. So why? Why is it so good? Well, look, I am a massive fan of the fantasy genre, of course. And in extension to that, the strategy RPG, okay? Or more officially called the tactical RPG. And so tactical RPGs usually got an isometric kind of top-down view, turn by turn, very tactical based. And whenever anyone refers to the tactical fantasy RPG, the game everyone thinks of, and indeed the great granddaddy, comparison that everyone is trying to recreate in a better way, is Baldur's Gate. And yes, I loved Baldur's Gate. I played Baldur's Gate to death. And many other, game developers have tried to make the next evolution of Baldur's Gate, a version of Baldur's Gate that would appeal properly and also achieve the modern standards that we have now in as video game players, as gamers. And this is where I feel so many game developers have gone wrong before, and why they haven't achieved it. Because in an attempt to recreate Baldur's Gate, but bring it forward into the modern, into modern standards, they do one of two things, which have caused them to fail. And so, just to mention some of these other attempts, you have, say, the first Dragon Age game, which was really good. I love Dragon Age. And they tried to say this is the true spiritual successor to Baldur's Gate. But it wasn't really, okay? It didn't capture the same, essence of Baldur's Gate. The other big kind of attempt where someone was really, they even said, this is like the next Baldur's Gate, is a game called Pillars of Eternity. Crowdfunded game, I've also given it a try, but that also failed. And this is the reasons why I feel they failed. With Dragon Age, in their attempt to modernize the Baldur's Gate formula, they changed so much that it didn't feel like Baldur's Gate. In fact, they created a kind of new hybrid, to the point where it wasn't really Baldur's Gate, and it lost a lot of the tactical awesomeness Baldur's Gate had. And then if you look at Dragon Age 2 and 3, well, they changed the format completely from the original Dragon Age, so they don't even compare to Baldur's Gate. And then we look at Pillars of Eternity, where they really tried to recreate the Baldur's Gate feel, so much so that the game, for me, sorry if you disagree with me here, felt dated. There were elements of Pillars of Eternity that honestly, and let me explain why, right? We gamers, honestly, we can be a little bit, selfish, and hear me out when I say this. We will enjoy a game happily, completely, right? When we don't know anything better than it, okay? A classic example of this is old games with old dated graphics. I cannot play games with dated graphics. And it's funny, some games age really well. Like Baldur's Gate, in fact. Baldur's Gate is a game that can age really well because of the style in which it was done. 2D animations can age really well, but 3D? Oh, gee. You look at some of the old 3D animated games, they do not age well. To the point, if you want to, people to really replay them, they've got to do a completely new graphical remaster. Look at the Crash Bandicoot remaster. They redid it and graphicked it up completely, and the gameplay was awesome. People loved it, and the game just sold heaps. But they needed to update the graphics. There are some games with graphic styles that do not age well to the point where you just can't play them. They look so horrible. Why? Because we've experienced something so much better that for me, I just can't bring myself and go back. It's like, oh, those graphics. But in the time when I played those games originally, like a good comparison in terms of graphical comparison is Zeldarina. Sorry, Zeldarina. Gosh, there's one for the history books. Write that one down. Gosh, Zelda Ocarina of Time. Love that game, okay? Absolutely brilliant. And that was cutting-edge graphics. I was amazed by the graphics when I played that. Now, the graphics are horrible, right? For its time, brilliant. Now, no. So this is what I mean when we gamers can be kind of selfish. As soon as we get something new and good, we want it. In fact, we demand we get this feature forever, okay? And so in comparison to Baldur's Gate, that was the best. And so there's no comparison, and that was it. It was awesome. But when games came out later on that had certain features that Baldur's Gate didn't have, and one of the best I can give is voiced dialogue, okay? Back in the day, games didn't have voiced dialogue. Now games do, and that is really much a standard for me. Like, a game needs voice dialogue. And this is interesting because I didn't have a problem with Baldur's Gate not having voice dialogue, but as soon as I experienced a game that had fully voiced dialogue, I was converted, and now I can't go back. I have been ruined. I cannot properly enjoy a game without voice dialogue anymore, because now I have an expectation. When I go into a game, I do not want to go into a game thinking I have to read a novel. And this is why when the Baldur's Gate remaster came out, I had a bit of trouble playing and getting into it as much as I could before, because, gee, like, there's so much reading in this game now. I could play a lot because I already knew the dialogue and stuff and skip through it a lot and just get into the gameplay. And so fast forward to Pillars of Eternity, wow, that game has so much dialogue. And it's not voiced, it's all written. You are reading a fully sized novel, and that slows down the gameplay so much. And in between things, like, you're finding anything, just pause. Lots of text. Lots and lots and lots of text. To the point that I totally gave up on that game. No, I can't do it, right? Gaming, we're at a new place now in gaming. We've achieved so much more. I expect something that I'm not getting, and I don't want to have to put in this type of effort to enjoy this game. Why? Because obviously I'm very lazy, and I've been spoiled, but that's where we're at in games. And then the combat of Pillars of Eternity obviously didn't stand out very well to me at all, because I don't remember much about what the combat was like. Just click on something and hit it, and you have your skills, and that was kind of it. I don't remember it being challenging. I don't remember it being innovative or creative. I just remember it being very much like Baldur's Gate. And if you are wanting to create the modern equivalent of Baldur's Gate, you don't just want to recreate the Baldur's Gate combat, you want to improve upon the combat. And I didn't notice any improvement in the combat in Pillars of Eternity, to the point where, gave up on it, wasn't interested. And so, no game in my mind has been able to do this, okay? Make the modern equivalent of Baldur's Gate. Until now. Yes. And now we come to Divinity Original Sin 2. This is the modern equivalent of Baldur's Gate, where it captures everything awesome about Baldur's Gate, but gives us all the features we would want, expect, and hope for in a modern AAA game. And this is a crowdfunded game, but this is top tier, best gaming experience you can ever have in a game. Like, oh my goodness. And Pillars of Eternity, you've now you've done what other innovative games have done before you, okay? You've ruined me. Now I'm going to want every other tactical RPG to be as good as this, otherwise I'm not going to enjoy it as much. If you were not made, right, and there was a game half as good as you that I was still able to play and enjoy, I could have enjoyed that game. But now, because you exist, I will hate that other game, because you've ruined me. So what has Divinity done that's so good? Well, as I've been talking about, it has addressed those things. It has modernized the tactical RPG and captured everything we loved about the original game. The first, and this seems like a small thing, but really, like, for modern gamer standards, it's not a small thing. This is a big thing. Everything is fully voiced. Everything. And it's beautiful. Not just the main characters, okay? Even the throwaway animal characters. If you need a special skill, right, to talk to animals. And so for most people, they won't have this skill. They won't talk to the animals, and they won't even see this feature. It's hidden away, right? And yet they've still, not only have they voiced it, okay, they have put as much attention to detail in the character of these animals that a lot of people who play this game won't even interact with, as they have with the main, story NPCs. This is brilliant. This attention to detail elevates a game, in my opinion, beyond just being a game to being a work of art, okay? When they have done such excellence on every element of the game, even to the dialogue and characterization of animals, of a rat in a dungeon, a random rat that scurries at your feet in a dungeon. They put this level of attention to that, okay? That will elevate a game, and truly. And when everything else is done so well, in my mind perfectly, this game has become a work of art, okay? A standard now for every other game to try and aspire to in excellence. And this plays such a major role in capturing what we had with Baldur's Gate, okay? And because that's the thing, you can, in the areas that you can get better at, you need to improve at for a game to be considered a modern effective game. And so that's the voice dialogue side of thing. But in terms of the actual dialogue itself, the written word, if you have a game that has brilliant dialogue, it's hard to improve on that. The standard is already there, you just need to meet it. And so the goal in just having good dialogue and story and characterization is just making it as good, because you can't really improve upon something that's already perfect. And Baldur's Gate character dialogues was just awesome. I like so in-depth, okay? And Divinity Original Sin does that as well. The humor in the side quests and the sheer joy of talking to random NPCs is amazing. There's this scene in Divinity where in the first act where you're just exploring the world and you come across this area where there are skulls on pikes surrounding a chest. You walk into it and you hear this skull screaming, "Open the chest! You really, really want to open the chest! Just open the chest!" So this, like, how random is this? A skull on a pike screaming right about this chest. And you go and talk to him, and he's like, "Why do you want me to open the chest?" "Because it's got really, really good things in it. Great things will happen if you open the chest. You have to open the chest."
Bloodied and sad, a severed head sits on its stick. Its eyes snap open and dart from you to the nearest noxious bulb, and back to you again.
Open the chest there! Go on! You know you want to! Open the chest! There's loot in it! Open the chest!
And then another skull and another pike is you talk to them. "Don't open the chest. Whatever you do, don't open the chest. Don't listen to this other guy." And there's like 3 or 4 skulls, each one of them screaming a different thing about this chest. And you're left wondering, what will you do? Will you open this chest or not? Of course, you've got to open the chest, and I won't spoil anything. But this level, it's just brilliant. And this is something completely separate to the plot, separate to the thing. It fits into the context of the world. Like, the setting of the first act is like the island, this experimentation island of this old tyrant wizard named Brachus Rex. And so these talking skulls actually fit in with the type of things Brachus Rex was doing. So it's actually world consistent, consistent with what's happening. Not so random where it's just breaks you out of the immersion, but increases the immersion of this island and this crazy stuff that's happening because of the history behind it. And you don't have to read these walls of text or go through massively long dialogue trees to learn about this Brachus Rex. No, like the history of this island is woven everywhere to the point where you get a pretty detailed understanding of the history of this island, separate to your own issue with trying to escape it and free yourself and stuff like that. Like, so you have your own storyline that you're following, and then you have this massive history that's in-depth and intricate on the location you're in, and you get fed bits of it everywhere to the point where you're totally immersed and you know so much about it, and you don't feel like you had to try to learn. You just learn about it because it's interwoven so perfectly. And this is how they got the writing so right and recaptured the Baldur's Gate feeling, and not because there are elements. And so the first big element on recapturing the perfection of Baldur's Gate is one, you need to get the writing as good, but then there's the gameplay and graphics, style, and other things like that. So let's look at these other elements. Graphically, Divinity Original Sin blows Baldur's Gate out of the water, and Pillars of Eternity, might I add, but it keeps the exact same feel, alright? And so, in terms of, Pillars of Eternity, they wanted to capture the same feel, so they basically recopied it in higher detail. There's like a 2D flat image with characters moving around on top in an isometric position, which is exactly what Baldur's Gate did, but just did it higher detail. The backgrounds were higher detail, and that was it. And so they've just recreated with higher detail. That doesn't make it feel like it's innovative or something that, you know, we would consider modern cutting edge technology. So what Divinity did, they made the whole environment in beautiful 3D rendering, just superb. They locked the camera into the same angle, but you can still float up over on top into a perfectly vertical position called the tactical view. So already we have an innovative advancement upon the old formula. We have the old formula, and we have something that you can do on top of it, which is do a tactical top-down camera view, which I have needed to use at times in combat when the angle of the camera didn't allow me to select where I wanted a spell to be cast, because it was locking onto a character that was in front of the location I wanted to cast it to. I was always locking onto the character, but going into tactical view, bang, solved it. Innovation, advance. This is a level up from the old formula. The other thing is that by being in 3D, the angle of camera is locked, but you can still rotate it. So what I'm saying angle, it's the actual, you know, degree angle you're looking at the characters, but you can still rotate the camera and look at it from every angle. This keeps the classic Baldur's Gate isometric feel, but gives us an evolution and an improvement on that old formula by allowing us to rotate the camera all around. Not allowing the camera to rotate and having 2D images like they had in Pillars of Eternity was a flaw, not a feature. And now we come to the combat. Oh gosh, where can I begin about the combat? This is so good. It is like 100 times better than even Baldur's Gate. Like this is true tactical combat. So many other games just have, oh, you do this kind of skill and this kind of disable, and you needed to say, and that's about it. And you have a skill that does more damage, you have a skill that can do damage to multiple person, you have a skill that does area AoE damage, and you have disabled skills, and that's kind of it. Well, not only does Divinity take those concepts of skills and ramp them up to like 1,000, but it adds so much more in. It has environmental-based advantage, disadvantage to a huge degree. So characters that are on a higher elevation that do ranged attacks do way more damage. So putting your ranged guys up on high, really important. Then you have conditional effects based on the ground you're standing on. If you're in water, if you're in fire, poison, or oil, then those elements interact with one another. You have monsters that have strengths and weaknesses to these different environmental things. You have objects that you can move to block enemies. You can throw those objects on top of enemies. You can use your spells to teleport those things. You can teleport yourself. And not only, those skill sets that I mentioned, Divinity adds additional skills on top of that with the interactions that you wouldn't believe. Like the teleportation one is brilliant. You can teleport an enemy on top of another enemy to do damage to them both. You can teleport a chest, on top of an enemy to do damage. You can teleport an enemy from a distance to trigger a combat situation, because so many other games have it that, the combat initiates when you walk to X location. Now you can trigger combat by teleporting the bad guys towards you. Is there a chest you can't reach? And this is just a side. Outside of combat, is there legitimately a chest you cannot get to? You can teleport that chest to you. You might have guessed, I love the teleportation spell. Not only that, your skills actually have a useful effect outside of combat. The teleportation is one example, but the fighter has a skill called, I think it's the hammer stomp or something like that can knock down enemies, but it also clears environmental ground effects like fire, poison, or oil, stuff like that, which is very useful in combat. But it's also really useful outside of combat. You come to an area where there's fire blocking your path, you use that skill, and it clears the path for you, and you can walk on through. So the position of your characters and your enemies is crucially important in this game, and it will spell victory or defeat. It is amazing how difficult a fight can be, and with the same level and the same skills you have on these characters, how easily you can make it by employing the right skills. This is what tactical combat should be like. This is how you can tell if a game has nailed tactical combat or not. If the same encounter can be almost impossible on the one hand, so easy on the other, depending on how you approach it. And I hope you've been able to see some of these tactical elements in the gameplay I've been featuring while I've been talking about this game. But to drive this point home, I want to show you a specific fight that, it was an awesome fight, right? And this game was so good that I had almost reached the end of the first act with this one set of characters, and in reaching the act, I'd realized that I was doing something crucially wrong with my combat and with the arrangement of my party, and that I could maximize the effectiveness of a group of skills and stuff like that I wasn't doing. So I restarted the game because I wanted to see if this would work. So I restarted the game, and by the way, I play on tactical difficulty. That's the highest difficulty you can play on, separate to the death mode where when you die, that's it, your save game gets deleted. No, you die so much in this game you want to be able to save. But I play on the highest difficulty you can, tactical mode. And I started a new game with this new stratagem in place. And, I owned with it. And so much so, this fight I could not do with my first playthrough. I avoided it. I couldn't fight these monsters on this level with my characters. It was too difficult. But with the second set of characters, utilizing the game's, statistics and the tactics and the way the combat and everything works together, not only did I beat this fight at the same level with the characters I couldn't in a previous, save, I owned them, totally destroyed them. And what did I do? Well, let's have a look. First, I positioned my characters in this party makeup. I got 2 range that do heavy damage. They're using crossbows. And then I got 2 heavy damage melee. And you'll notice I placed my melee guys on either side of a pond on top of this ridge that was higher up. Now, I had the teleport ability in my previous game, but I didn't think of this strategy, this idea when I was playing there. And my characters were having trouble doing damage. But with these characters, I could. And so then I placed my range guy on the edge, just enough where he can teleport the queen. The queen is the toughest monster there at all. If I could deal with the queen, I might be able to deal with all the other monsters. So I teleport the queen into the pond. See, the issue of these monsters is that when you attack them, they spew fire as blood, and so you get damaged to hell while you're trying to kill these things. And then the queen is shooting fire like you wouldn't believe, fireballs, and you get destroyed. But by teleporting her into the water, I soak her, which means no fire spewing out when I'm doing damage, and I have teleported her right in between my 2 main DPS melee characters. And so they just start pummeling the queen, while my archers start pummeling her from a distance. And because my archers now are doing physical damage, because previously I had 2 magic focused characters, I could reduce the queen's armor quickly and heavily enough that then I could use my melee guys to do the knockdown skills that they have to knock down the queen each round, so she's losing her turns to attack back because she has to get up from being knocked down. And it's an absolute slaughter. Destroy this fight. And then, of course, the other slugs, because they're so far away, have to spend their turns just getting to my location where I initiated the fight, which gives me time to reposition my characters ready for their approach. And when the slugs do finally arrive, I'm able to deal with them in short order. So do you see how this works? An impossible fight has just now been turned into a fight that I have destroyed with ease because of the awesome tactics and freedom that you have in this game. Every single fight has almost limitless options in how you can choose to approach it, because you have to consider so much more than just, I'm going to use these skills and initiate the fight. You have to think about the position of each one of your characters, 4 characters, with hundreds of different locations you can put them in the start of a fight. Already you have huge options, and then you have to think of the way the damage you're going to deal, because there's magic damage and there's physical damage, the skills you want to employ. And so something else I've been doing before each fight, because I'm playing on the highest difficulty, is my characters have the geomancy spells, and that means you could put oil down in certain locations, and so I throw oil down in certain locations at the beginning of the later fights near certain enemies that when the fight they'll have to walk through the oil, and then I can teleport the guys I want to focus on right into my melee guys, and my melee guys can just hammer them because they're point blank range ready to fight, and the other enemies get slowed as they try and approach. This is just one strategy that's worked really well. I've had to do other strategies. But look at what I'm doing. Before a fight, I'm laying down oil and traps and other things like that, ready to slow down enemies so I can stagger their approach and deal with one guy at a time and stuff like that. And this game gives you the freedom to employ these strategies. Is just brilliant. This level of combat is so awesome. Like, this is tactical combat. This is what it should be. Best tactical combat I have ever played in a game, period. This is why Divinity Original Sin number 2 is the best tactical RPG I have ever played, and in my mind has ever been made. And I just had to share that with you, and why I feel so many other games have hit the mark in their attempts to recreate Baldur's Gate but improve upon that formula. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed, and I look forward to seeing you again. Until that time, farewell.